Hello, Judy.
Hey Lisa, how's it going?
It is going. As you can see behind me, it looks bright and sunny outside. It's not.
It's not. It's not.
It is
I'm looking out a
anything but.
very dreary window here and it's
It
very
is wet and
cloudy,
soggy and cloudy and windy.
but you still had a nice walk.
I had a lovely walk. It was refreshing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now,
Chill.
did you hear what we just did there, Judy?
Yep, we talked about the weather.
We talked about the weather, but there was we totally are able to frame that experience of the weather in two different ways.
Mm-hmm.
It is dreary and wet, cold, and windy. But you want to know what my experience of my walk was?
Sure.
What was the word I used?
Lovely.
It was refreshing.
Refreshing. There you go.
Isn't that
Yes.
crazy? That is what we're talking about today. Today, our conversation is looking at our perspective, specifically on looking at our perspective of our pasts and
Uh-huh.
how it affects how we're living our lives right now.
And
Mm-hmm.
how it affects our attitude toward wanting to write about our past because
And
it feels a little uncomfortable.
yes, and our ability to um, consider whether or not we are affected by writer's block.
Okay. Yes, I agree.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here we go. Um, we've been talking for a while, so it's like, okay, so where do we start now?
Well, we want to start with looking at our past stories.
Yes, this
And
past week, you and I, and Mom and Michelle got together, and we wrote about a funny story from our past.
uh-huh.
And it was so much fun, and it was a different kind of writing for us. The week before, we wrote about our first cars, and that it's like we all wrote about our first cars, and that was fun, and we laughed and we told some good stories. But it was really interesting when we talked about funny stories, because you specifically came up with a story from, like, I don't want to call it your black period, but it's a period of your life from the age of 18 to 35 that you never write about.
That's true. Yeah, I
And
don't.
it was so funny. You were in tears laughing about this experience. And it was so unlike you. I was like, who is this person? And where did she come from? And it was so fun to see that side of you. I was like, oh my gosh, you've got a whole chapter, a whole section of the novel of your life that.
Be careful what you uncover within me. It may shock you.
So what we were talking about was, looking at past stories. One of the stories that you specifically talk about is how responsible you are, and that is a constant recurring theme in your life.
Mhm.
And this story it had a little bit of responsibility, but it was nuanced by fun and being carefree and silly and
Silly, just silly.
and,
Yes.
and disrespectful and inappropriate. And I was like, ooh, ooh,
Juicy. That was
yeah,
juicy, huh?
it was very juicy. And I just thought to myself, it's so interesting how our perspective from way back colors us to what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, this podcast is called Overcoming Writer's Block. People
Correct.
who are listening to this podcast, people who follow us, perhaps struggle to one extreme or another with not being able to get their words down the paper for a multitude of reasons. And I think that one of the reasons that people have a hard time getting their words down on paper is because they're bringing something from their past that no longer serves them. What do you think about that?
Well, I think they're bringing something from the past that they're seeing from one perspective, but they're
Yeah.
not seeing it from the perspective of how it served them and what they actually learned from it or
Mm-hmm.
brought into their personality that serves them now. And you often, when you hear people talk about a past like that, they'll say, oh yeah, I always fail at what I do, I never succeed, I can never have an outcome that I'm proud of. If you listen to somebody that's couching their past in a lack of success, listen for those words, because you'll find them. And if you're talking about your past and you hear yourself saying, I never this and I always that, stop. There may be truth in that, but I would recommend or suggest that you might want to look at that in a different way.
Well, because you can always find evidence for whatever you put out there, right?
Yes, that's right.
So if you want to find evidence that you are somebody who is blocked and you struggle with following through on things, there are plenty of things that you can, anybody can find in their life that they have dropped the ball on, or they have not been as successful as they had anticipated. Or you can look at the other things in your life. Everybody has those also that you have been successful at.
Right, exactly.
And followed through and completed. It all depends on what evidence you're looking for. I'm thinking about people who want to quit smoking. There's research out there that says that people have to try to quit smoking 7 to 9 times before they actually do accomplish that goal. And if you're somebody who keeps saying, well, this is going to be something that I am unable to do. I've tried it to quit 2, 3, 4 times.
I always fail.
I always fail at everything I try.
I never accomplish what I want to accomplish.
You are not going to be successful.
Correct.
Because it takes several times to be successful. In the same way, people who say, I'm just somebody who gets blocked and I start things and I don't finish them, those people can turn that into a kind of writer's block. I'm just somebody who struggles with this. It's never going to happen. I'm never going to be good enough.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's something that will just continue to occur in their life, right?
Yeah.
Now, and the conversation we're having isn't going to help everybody.
Right.
But it will help those people who can learn a new set of words. They can eliminate always and never and say up until now. Up until now, I have been unsuccessful at doing A, B, and C. This time, it's going to work. This time, I'm really ready for this to happen. And I'm really willing to say, up until now, it hasn't worked, but I know this time is different. And I love the fact that has such hope. It has such power, and it has an attitude of change. And you can build in that hope. When we have hope of that nature, you can build enthusiasm into it. You can build a mentality of possibility, and it changes the dynamics of what you have to work with to go to that next level, to that next step, to make this thing truly work for you.
Exactly.
And I think that can be very well placed into, why do you have writer's block? Well, nothing I've ever done is worth putting down on paper. I've never blah, blah, blah. Up until now, you haven't seen it that way. Right. Okay. You have a choice today to look at those things that you feel have always been negatives in your life. And you can look at ways that those things actually served you and helped you become who you are and helped you to, be really good at raising your kids because you understand them at a very deep level, and on and on, but and I think it might even be interesting to do your morning pages and to write down all that negative bullshit. Excuse
Get
me.
it down.
Get it down, get it out of your mind,
Mhm.
and now sit down with a clean piece of paper and say, okay, if I were giving recognition to these events and explaining how they really helped me in my life,
Mhm.
it would sound like this.
Mhm.
And I have a feeling up until now might be in there somewhere.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
we have to remember that we are not victims of this life.
Mhm.
We have free choice.
Mhm.
And you hear people say, oh, why would God do this to me? Well, God did something to you. He gave you free choice. So if that happened for you, and if you're feeling blocked, whose whose choice is it to unblock you?
Yep.
It's yours, right?
Yep. What's happened in the past was done, and you can look at it from different perspectives.
Exactly.
And what happened in the past was perfect because
Mhm,
it happened,
mhm.
and it's done, and it's over, and it can't be undone, right?
That's right.
And what happens as we move forward is we take the perspective we want to, either
Mhm,
the victim's perspective or the hero's perspective, if you can get into that story, and move forward in the direction you choose.
mhm,
And so if you choose to believe that you're somebody who deals with writer's block or a creative block, or you are unable to achieve your goals
mhm.
because of blank, you're going to find the evidence to back that up.
Absolutely. We
If
can
it's
rationalize anything, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. If instead you choose to decide and tell yourself a different story
Mhm.
based on a positive outlook of those same events, you will find the evidence in that vein to move forward.
And it's equally as true.
Yes, it is equally as true. And I want to say that it's even more powerful, but it's harder, right? Because
Mhm,
we tend to focus on that negative.
mhm.
So although the negative is easier, the positive is more powerful.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And it also, if you think about it, I hate to use the words positive, negative. They've been so overused.
Mhm, mhm.
But the word negative, when I think about negative, I also think about hopeless, sad, unhappy, all of those words that are the feelings that go along with having thoughts of negativity.
Okay.
If you think about, okay,
How
let me,
about how about instead of negative, thoughts that don't serve you,
oh, I like that. No, I think that's a
thoughts
really good
that
replacement.
don't help you move forward in the direction that you of your dreams.
Well, I've heard people say so often, why is it that you can have, two young people who are raised in the same environment, who have the same situation? Maybe they were emotionally abused, and maybe they had parents who had addiction issues or
Mhm,
whatever.
mhm.
And one of them becomes a successful millionaire, and the other one ends up, shooting up in some drug
Destitute.
house.
Mhm.
And they were raised just the same. They were raised, equally. Well, we know what the answer is. And the answer is that this one made a decision that they were going to get out of that life and they were going to go forward. This person said, that's just the way it is. It's how it works for me. One is hopeful, one is hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
And
One
I
thinks
mean,
thoughts that are serving them, one thinks thoughts that doesn't, that
mm-hmm,
thoughts that
mm-hmm.
don't. I mean, exactly. Up
Yes,
until
English
now,
teacher.
up until now, I have had thoughts that have blocked me, have stopped me from creating. I have had thoughts that have stopped me from getting my words down the paper, from creating my memoir, from writing my poem, from creating what
Writing my story, writing down.
story.
Yeah. And, I think the thing that is a shame about that, you might have a person listening that says, so who cares? That's my thing. I don't have to be a writer, Okay, no, you don't. That's a personal choice. However, there is such value in putting your words down on paper for especially your family, for your children, for their children, for your grandchildren, to learn that you were able to take those stories that were a bit hopeless in your life and turn them into food for thought and ways to move forward and to frame a different possibility for yourself. And if you don't write it down, if you don't put it out there for the world, that's lost.
That lesson is lost. Yes. And don't we really, I think we've talked about this before, we want to be heard. We want to be seen. We want to put our voice and our we want to put ourselves out into the world to leave a legacy. We want to cause change and make our mark. And we can do that if we move forward in a way that isn't blocked.
That's right. And there's so much going on in the world right now. One of the things that comes to my mind is that suicide rates in teenage people are much higher than they've ever been. And I understand that the world is a tough place to navigate right now. So if part of their tribe, part of their circle of people can give them words of hope and support, there might be something in that that helps them say, no, that's not an answer. This is what my aunt did, my grandmother did, everybody has their stuff. And
come on, Judy, everybody's got their shit.
You got it. Yeah. And then that shit happens to all of us, right?
Shit happens. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's so true. It's if you just have that person that has a few words that resonate with you, that you can identify with, that you can find hope in, that makes them overcoming their writer's block extremely valuable.
Because writer's block, I think, comes up in so many different areas of our lives. I mean, we usually talk about writer's block pretty specifically, but I think writer's block is really a euphemism for being blocked in really being the person that you strive to be. And we are all of us blocked on a regular basis in something in our lives. And I think these strategies and techniques that we're talking about on a weekly basis, and when we do the interviews, we're trying to help people move through those blocks, whether they're literal writing blocks or some kind of mental block, keeping you from living the life that you want to live. That's
Well,
what we're
and
doing.
there's nothing wrong with having those blocks. There's nothing wrong with having
Oh, I
those
think they're
trust
inevitable. They're
issues.
absolutely inevitable. Everybody has them, but there are so many people that don't don't recognize and then
Don't give in to
don't
them.
exactly.
And you know, some people, there's been a few people I've heard, well, I think there was, I can't remember which interview it was that you did, where someone said, I've never experienced writer's block. Well, somewhere along the line, they decided
Hmm.
that their words mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And with that sense of contribution and that sense of my words are important, I would expect that it's harder to be blocked because you have a reason. You have a you're feeling hopeful about
Mm-hmm.
putting those words out there.
Yep, I totally agree. So,
Mhm.
Judy, this is a good one. This one's
Yeah.
deep, very
Mm-hmm.
deep. It's a hard one too. This, up until now, I
Mm-hmm.
felt
Mm-hmm.
or thought this. Now I'm thinking and saying and feeling this.
This.
Mhm.
And by being able to, those three little words can eliminate the hopelessness and the failure and all of that, and instead build in the hope and the recognition
Mhm.
of what the benefit for you was in having gone through whatever it was you went through.
Yeah. And that will give you the strength to the evidence to say, yeah, I can do it this time.
I can do it.
Nice.
I can do it. It's not a problem.
Okay. Well, with that, Judy,
Okay.
love you, and we'll catch you next time.
Okay. Can't wait. See you in a week.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye, Lisa.